All right, all right. So here we are on YouTube because LinkedIn was failing me. So let me see. Let me just share this stream with everyone. All right. So I dropped that on LinkedIn and I'm going to share it with some more people. And then once we get people in here, we're going to stream this thing. Let me see. And then I'm going to make sure everyone gets the replay. Everyone's going to ask for the replay anyway. I know how these things go. So let me see. We are live. All right. And let me also get that on LinkedIn. And then we are good to go. I'm going to start sharing my screen in just a second. But because we're a bit late, I'm going to leave some room for people to actually get in here. It's always great when technology decides to fail you, like just a couple minutes before you go live. That's always exciting. Let's see. We are live on YouTube with a brand new webinar. There we go. And then once everyone knows about it, then we're going live. So I'll give it a few more seconds. And then we can get started. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen. People will be joining, and I can imagine people who opted in for a LinkedIn event, they might miss this. But I already see some people. Denali already joined from LinkedIn. I'll make sure everyone gets the replay because people were probably really invested in the whole LinkedIn thing and then moving here last minute. Unfortunately, that is how things go sometimes, and not always is there much that we can do about it. Doesn't mean I'm any less excited for the webinar, for the cool stuff that we have to offer, as well as and this is not some fake trick, but if you stick around till the end, there are going to be discounts, there are going to be free credits, there's going to be a whole lot of really great stuff. So that's going to be at the end of this webinar. Before we do that, I'm going to dive into what I'm doing currently in cold outreach, what's working, what isn't working, and a lot of what I hear and see other people talking about, what is going wrong currently, and not unsurprisingly, a lot of that is about deliverability because clearly getting into the inbox is challenging. I struggled with it at times as well. And sometimes still, I'm surprised by how quickly infrastructure is actually, churning. So I found a solution to really stay on top of it and to make sure that we maximize our chances to actually get into the inbox. So that is something that we're going to talk about today. It's sometimes it gets a little bit nerdy, but it's something that I'm really excited about. So hopefully you're excited to nerd out with me. So let me share my screen and I will show you the beautiful slide deck that Claude helped me put together. Let me see. Entire screen number one. There we go. And then this one can go here. And LinkedIn has disappointed me, so LinkedIn can go. So here we are. And sorry, just getting set up here. There we go. All right, now I'm able to see the comments as well. So if you have any questions, now you're able to ask them. I'm going to read them, but I keep them until the end is what I usually do. So when you have questions and you feel like I'm ignoring you, don't worry because by the end of this, I'm going to actually get towards the questions just not to break up the webinar too much. Now, it's also very, very, very warm here, as I think it is in the rest of the world. So you're going to be seeing me drink quite a bit. Now, the main reason why, or one of the main reasons why I started this webinar, why I came with this webinar, is because I kept having the same conversations with a lot of people, with either agency owners who are a big part of my, my network, but also with a lot of, people at companies, like from CMOs to sales leaders to SDRs. They're all kind of seeing the same, where their results are just steadily trending down. And then you keep having that conversation like, okay, is cold email dead, right? Is it no longer working? Is cold outreach dead? And that conversation has been coming up quite a bit. And now, obviously, right now isn't a great season to be doing cold outreach. We're in the middle of summer. There's a lot happening in the world in terms of events and things that are, that get people their attention. Then there is AI. So up until a couple months ago, was very, very easy still to get into the inbox, usually, compared to now. And then add on top of that, a lot of AI messaging, etc., that people were getting. They're, let's call their mental spam filters. They're up more than ever, right? So that is what we're seeing mostly. And luckily, there are fixes for it, right? So the good news is there are fixes. The bad news is that you really have to stay on top of it, and it's a moving target. So it's something where what I'm going to tell you now, that is something that's working right now, but in 2 or 3 months, it could be something very different, which makes, for interesting game of cat and mouse, I guess. But it's it is what it is these days, and it keeps things interesting. And luckily, we have technology that can really help us out in a lot of cases. Then data still thing, obviously, where people have been talking a lot about it. First, it was Apollo, where you can get really cheap data. Now there's kind of different as well. And access to data usually isn't the issue anymore, but getting actual good data, and getting the right data and how you use that data, that is where the real edge is these days, right? So you can have unlimited data, and the data could even be good, but if you don't know how to use it, then that's one thing. And if you don't know how to actually target the right companies, then you're never going to get responses, right? So it's more important than ever to target the right companies and the right people, and that is something that good data helps us do. So we're going to be talking about data, and that sort of like segues into, okay, your total addressable market is bigger than your title filters. So those two, they're working together. Then intent data is mostly noise. You kind of already knew that probably. And then signals are, or have been, just like a big thing for a while now, and they're still working. And there's one signal that is really standing out. So there are two signals that I always set up. Today I'm going to talk about one, which is around social listening, and it's like people are doing it a lot, but it's still working. So why not keep doing it, right? And that is something that I want to talk about, where the way I'm doing it with the tools I'm doing it, I'm very, very impressed with the results that we're getting, and also very much with the workflows that we're able to set up, which is important as well, where we're easily able to get all the social listening, etc., get that done in a way that we can safely just set it and forget it, because we know our workflows and the data underneath it, they work. And that really helps us get results from social listening. And they're, again, by far our best performing campaigns. And then just a little bit about how, email owners infantry, and we're not doing full multi-channel outreach with LinkedIn, etc., but we're adding some calling as well, which is working in some cases, which is working very well in some cases. In some cases, it's great to have it as support, because when you, for example, get a reply from someone, it's a positive reply, then it's great to have that backup, that support, where you can just pick up the phone and say, how about we book a call tomorrow, instead of sending your calendar link, etc. So it's one thing generating that positive reply. It's another thing to actually get that person to show up to a demo. So those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about, to show you and to talk about what's working and what isn't. And yeah, that's something that I'm oddly excited about. Excuse me. So talking about spam, we're going to have to talk a little bit about, the elephant in the room, I guess, where, like spam filters and things are getting more advanced. So there are AI spam filters. Obviously, there's a lot of um, there are a lot of technological advances that Google, Microsoft, etc., that they're implementing, right? Where and that makes sense. Where now they're able to leverage something that we call fingerprinting. So what that means is if you're always sending the exact same message, that is something that just gets flagged. And I'm not talking about just the exact wording that you're using, but the actual structure of your message as well. So if you're always saying the same thing, if you're always using the same structure for your messaging, then that's no longer working, which is one of the reasons why only using spin text just isn't enough. Because yes, you're using different words, but the structure looks exactly the same. So you're either going to have to use a lot of spin text or use something different. Now, taking a couple steps back before we get too advanced, for the people who don't really know what I'm talking about right now, is imagine you're sending 100 messages per day or 50 messages per day. This isn't really an issue, but as you get above that with volume, then you're going to be sending a lot of the same messages, right? Which is something that spammers do, that phishers do. So hackers that are trying to just break into a company, and they're sending a lot of the same message because for them it doesn't make sense to personalize in any way or use AI. And that is something that Google, Microsoft, etc., they are really, really um, just really keeping track of, and they're really hammering down on these days, which is why it's more important than ever to have a lot of variety there. In the end, if you're always saying the same thing, it's very easy to start picking it up and start picking it out and say, okay, that is the same person always saying the same thing, that is not a legitimate sender. Whereas if you're always sending different stuff, the shorter the better. It is going to be very hard to detect that as being the same message. And that is something that is just more important now, where maybe for the first one, maybe for the first five, in some case, maybe for the first 10,000 sends, you can get away with sending the same message. But after that, you're going to have to start rotating the message that you're sending, which is very unfortunate because there were times where you found that winning angle and you could just keep sending it, and things were great. But now these days, unfortunately, you're going to have to try different angles, try different structure, etc. Whereas, okay, you have your value prop and that works great, stick with that, but just find different ways of wording it. And that is where AI can be really helpful, where if you have a message that works well, try and add some AI variables in there, or just tell AI, okay, rewrite the entire structure for me so just the message is just different. And then you start just adding different variants of that message, whereas ideally your message just looks different. Now there are a few other ways that you can achieve that. And the best way of thinking about it, in my experience always, is to reverse engineer things, right? So our main goal is to send a lot of different messages, and that is on, let's say, on a domain level. We want from that domain, we want to have a lot of different messages going out from those inboxes. So that's why it's important that you add, in my experience, and I've also heard that from others, always test everything that I'm telling you, right? It is, important to add your inboxes to different campaigns. And some people are very much against that. They're saying, no, you want it to look, as if you're always, targeting the same ICP, etc. First of all, to me, it looks more natural to email different types of personas and different types of companies. That it looks a bit more natural, but that is something that's just my opinion, right? However, when you think about it, if your goal is to send a lot of different messages so that fingerprinting doesn't take place as early as possible, then adding to different campaigns, where every campaign obviously has a different message, that just makes it easier to always send different messaging from the domains and the inboxes that you're using. Which is one the small tip where you say, okay, I have all different Campaigns, great. Add your inboxes to many different campaigns, so your inbox will be sending a lot of different messages, just making that that fingerprinting process take longer. That is one small tip I can give you. But in the end, there's not one silver bullet that can really make it so that you're going to get into the inbox. Okay, if you do this one thing, everything's great. You can just keep sending. In the end, it's a lot of small things. Obviously authentication and complaint thresholds. That's a very big one. Volume ramping as well. But then your infrastructure is just going to get burned. That is just going to happen. And sometimes it takes 2 weeks, sometimes it takes 4, sometimes it takes 2 months. In some very rare cases, I've heard of it taking longer. I've seen that where people say, "Hey, I've been sending for a year." That is rare, and if that happens to you, great, congratulations. But I personally don't gamble on that, and what I do instead is let's say preemptively, I rotate my infrastructure. So initially every 2 weeks I get a new infrastructure in there, whereas in the background I have new infrastructure warming up, and then after a month, 6 weeks, and then 2 months, I start rotating that infrastructure. And that used to be very, very difficult. You have to place your orders, get everything uploaded and everything. Now with Mission Inbox or missioninbox.com, that is something you can just do programmatically, where you can simply, in my case, I click a button and it says, okay, rotate infrastructure, and it buys new infrastructure, kills the other one, and then rotates in the one that has been warming up. And that way you don't have to think about anything. You can just go into n8n, Make, or Claude Code and set up these workflows that whenever you just, give the command, whether that's a button or you just type something, it will rotate infrastructure, buy new one, and you don't have to think about anything because DNS is being done. Everything is that you control everything, and that's just very, very, very helpful. I've found where you can then programmatically rotate your infrastructure. Now, Mission Inbox is custom SMTP, and I've found that gives you a really great blend of where you're landing in the inbox. Now, and what I mean by that is some people say, okay, Microsoft gets me into the inbox more often. Other people say Google gets me into the inbox more often. I feel that custom SMTP in this case just really sits nicely in the middle there, where I have good deliverability just across the board. In some cases, because I'm working with younger infrastructure, anything like Barracuda, those types of things, I take them out. So it's a great way just to have that infrastructure that gets you into the inbox on a lot of occasions, and you can programmatically spin up new inboxes. And if you're rotating infrastructure that often, then domain cost is kind of going to be an issue, but using subdomains can help with that. And then the added benefit is that it makes it even easier to rotate your infrastructure. And what I've tested in the past is you buy 8 domains, so the core domain has a good reputation, and then once you have that core domain that has a good reputation, then the subdomains they last longer as well. So that is something to keep in mind. So you get some 8 domains, you have subdomains on there, for example, a.domain.com, b.domain.com. You get 1 to 3 inboxes on there, and then you start warming up, you start sending, and then using Claude Code or a button or what have you, you can just rotate it. They rotate the infrastructure and just do it all again. And that is how I go about infrastructure. I have AI write variants or use AI variables. So I don't have AI write every single message I send. Just, fill in some variables, fill in some blanks, or just use a template, but AI just spins up different variations. And that way you kill the fingerprint. So when it comes to infrastructure, I definitely recommend you check out missioninbox.com, and they can help you get set up with custom SMTP that does really well. And you can just take the next step in programmatically getting your infrastructure set up. And if you stick around to the end, you get a discount code that you can use, and you get a discount from Mission Inbox as well. Then it's time for data. Now, data is obviously a massive one, right? Once you have your infrastructure set and you're able to get into the inbox, that's great. Then it's a, they play together where, if you have a great infrastructure but your bounce rate's high, you're sending to bad data, then you're just going to burn your infrastructure in a week, maybe 2 weeks if you're lucky, and that's it. So you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping your bounce rate under 2%, where 2% is high. But I have a -1% bounce rate across the board using Revenue Base. And how I use Revenue Base is they give you unlimited data. So you get unlimited emails and mobiles, but you own the data, and they refresh it as every single month, more or less, which is super helpful, because in that way, as I own the data, I can just really easily pull a very big list, a broad list, and then use that to just filter down and actually target the people that I'm looking for. So that's going to be the next slide. For now, check out Revenue Base. You're going to get a discount, and then find Email Prospeo if you want to fill some gaps, but their coverage is really, really good. Just and sometimes you want to have that backup just to really get the most out of your total addressable market, which your total addressable market is bigger than you think and bigger than your title filters. So that is where Revenue Base is just really, really helpful. Where how I go about it is I pull a very broad list always, where I get the list, I get a big list, and then um, I start filtering in that list, right? So I pull a list of, let's say, 10,000 companies. I get their website in Markdown format, and then I use a very cheap model like Gemini Flash, for example, to then say, okay, based on this website text, is this true? Is that true? Is that, like, is the B2B company, yes or no? Is the SaaS company, yes or no? Et cetera, et cetera. And then once I have that, then I can say, okay, on the companies that are a good fit, let's run enrichment, let's keep it running further. So that's how I often go. And Revenue Base gives you filters as well. So companies that do have a sales team, that don't have a sales team, that are recently funded, that type of thing. So they have some really solid signals in there as well. So I start broad and then I narrow it down. That's how I work with Revenue Base, and it's just super helpful. And they have really good, department and job title filters that are just very, very helpful. And they do a lot of classification behind the scenes, so that you don't have to correct that code every time that you want to target, VP of sales at this or that company. They do a really good job of just classification of job titles behind the scenes, so that data is really good and just really helps you get more out of your, out of your total addressable market. Just add more to your total addressable market, where coverage is just better compared to other tools in my experience. That's how I start broad. I sometimes also start narrow, and for that I use Ocean.io, that I can also very much recommend. Where whenever I start a new project, I usually pull in from from HubSpot, ADIO, from the CRM. I pull in closed won, and then I create lookalike audiences based on that closed won data. So imagine that I'm working with a company and they have 100 clients. Then I start building these segments based on the verticals that they want to target, and based that these companies, the verticals they belong to. Then and that is something that you can do as well, where if you're currently stuck with cold outreach, you're not sure who to target, you can just grab Ocean.io and you can say, okay, these are my current customers. You want to segment them the right way. So not say, okay, like we have 100 customers, and some are SaaS, some are agencies, some are e-commerce, and we're all going to throw them together. Instead, just say, okay, here are all the e-commerce companies, here are all the agency companies, here are all the SaaS companies, all of those. So for all of those segments, you start building lookalike audiences in Ocean. So that's how you start narrow, and then you go broad. And those are some really good campaigns as well, that help you just find companies that are really similar to the companies that you're already working with. And that is just a really, really easy, fast way to get things rolling, and to get campaigns rolling, campaigns out the door that are really targeted and they're really good. And then you start building your cold layer, your cold campaigns, using just revenue-based data. And that is one way that I found, working really well for me. One other way I'm using Ocean.io is, whenever there's a new demo booked or a new client signed, we do the same thing, automatically trigger that liquid. I need another coffee. Automatically trigger that lookalike audience. So, okay, new demo booked. Then we start looking at that company. What is that company like? Great. Into Ocean, find similar companies to that company that is interested in our services, and that becomes a new campaign. And that is just a quick automation that you can set up, and that is one that we see do well as well. And that is one way that you can sort of like programmatically do cold outreach, right? Where you keep just running targeting based on what's working, and it just keeps sort of like optimizing and tweaking itself over time. And that's one of my my favorite ways of using Ocean as well. And they can, again, if you stick around to the end, you'll get free Ocean.io credits, and you can just try it out for yourself. Then time to get to intent data. So signals I already talked about for a bit now. I'm not using them in any revolutionary way, but I am a very big fan of the tool that I'm using for it. So that is Jungler.ai. Now, I think everyone by now kind of realizes that things like Six Sense, Bombora, etc. Like in some cases, do they work? Sure, but there's just there are better and cheaper solutions out there that work really well. And across the board, for the last 2 months, I've really gotten a lot deeper into Jungler and social signals, and they're the best campaigns. Anything around social signals is the stuff that performs best for us. And it's not rocket science, but basically how we use it is we whenever there's a new project, we look at influencers, keywords, competitors that we want to monitor on LinkedIn. And then obviously Jungler does that for us, and they have a really awesome API. You can just jump into Claude Code, or in my case Cursor. I live in Cursor all day every day, and spin up new campaigns whenever there's a new project. Then you're getting a very broad list, right, of people that interact with your competitor or with a specific influencer or keyword. And then on that data that you get from Jungler, I already run a really quick ICP check with like a super mega cheap model like Gemini Flash. Again, for example, you're paying pennies, less than that, just to say, okay, based on their headline and all of this, how likely are they to be a good fit for this, based on the go-to-market playbook that we have. If it's above a 6 or a 7, depends on the project and how difficult it is to determine. Then they go to the next step. They go into a revenue base, and we enrich them in revenue base, and then we get a lot of data, right? So we get their we get their background information, we get their employee data, their employer data, we get company data, about sections, all of that. And that just gives us so much rich information that we can then easily say, okay, are they a fit for us? Yes or no? And if yes, where do they fit, right? Because for every project, and you as well, you're going to have different value propositions for different personas, different verticals, etc. So then I let AI pick, okay, this person is a VP of sales at a mid-market SaaS company. Look at all of our different value propositions, and every single value proposition will say, okay, this is the value proposition for this, etc. Great. Which one's best? And AI will pick the best value proposition and then add that lead to a campaign, sending the best value proposition for them. That is usually how we go about it. In some cases, I have like templates as fallbacks, but that's the way that I'm running it, and that's working really well. And Jungler is just a phenomenal tool to work with, and they're doing a great job. Out of the ones that are tested, they're so far, they're my favorite ones. So I definitely encourage you to check them out, and you can get a discount with them as well if you stick around for a little bit longer, because we're getting towards the end here, and then we have time for Q&A. So one other thing that we started doing that's been making a difference is actually calling people that have shown interest, right? Now, one metaphor that once has been said to me that has stuck with me that I like is when you want to invade a country, you don't want to send just the infantry, you want to send air support, the navy, whatever you have that you can throw at them, which makes sense. So just sending cold emails, great, but imagine just going back to that jungler use case. Maybe you get someone that's a really good fit, but you cannot confidently find their email, but you do have their phone number because your revenue base gives you both, right? You get unlimited emails, but sometimes there's no email, but there is a phone number. Great. You just pick up the phone, you call them. So that's one way you can do it. And that's the actual cold calling. But one other thing is the moment someone shows interest, that is great, but that's just the first step. That helps you kind of get, your foot in the door, but that door can close again if you don't book them on your calendar as fast as possible. And these people, they see a cold email, they reply, and they are busy again. They go back to work, they start doing their things. Ideally, you pick up the phone, you call them and say, hey, thanks for your reply. We'd love to show you a bit more. How's next Thursday, for example, right? So ideally, you're able to pick up the phone. And how we do that is whenever we get a positive reply, um, then we've already enriched that person in revenue base, and we have all of that data sitting inside a super base. So if then we have a phone number for them, then we get a Slack notification in our caller channel, and they pick up the phone and they have full context on what needs to be said and what needs to be done, and they pick up the phone, they call that person. If you get a positive reply, you don't have a phone number, then you can try LinkedIn. It's just, in my experience, unless you get like avatars going, LinkedIn is a little bit tricky to scale. But then again, by all means, get avatars going and get fake profiles going and try and scale it. I heard it's doing really well for some people, but for us, it's just great to just pick up the phone and get people on your calendar as quickly as possible that way. So that is how we're using, not really multi-channel outreach, but having a tool like revenue base can really make a difference there, because you don't have to then say, okay, I'm going to pay 50 cents for their phone number after I already got the positive reply, which at scale just really is not sustainable. So that's how we go about outbound. So just to recap, that is, make sure you're sending a lot of different emails, so a lot of different messages from as many inboxes as possible that you can spin up. And the easiest way to do that, and the easiest way to regularly rotate your infrastructure, is to use a tool like Mission Inbox, because there you can use their API, and you can just every 2 weeks, for example, just rotate that infrastructure, and that will just help you keep that steady, getting into the inbox rate. And then for data, revenue base, for actual enrichment, they have phenomenal coverage for any company that is on LinkedIn. You get email addresses that are really good quality. I don't do any additional validation on the email addresses. So we get less than 1% bounce rate, and is helping us save a lot in costs that that we otherwise get by having all these waterfalls and different email providers. And then Ocean.io, those two help you build lists where you can either go really broad, so you get a really big list from revenue base, then you get more information on those companies, and you use really cheap models to then narrow that very broad list down by saying, okay, I'm only looking for product-led growth SaaS companies. Great, just get 100,000 software companies from revenue base and run them through Gemini Flash. That will cost you, I don't know, $10, for example, and then which one of them are product-led SaaS companies, and that's going to make your life a whole lot easier, instead of trying to start the other way around, trying to find like a resource online that has product-led SaaS, like product-led growth SaaS companies, and you have to try and scrape that and enrich it and what have you. Just start broad. That is what I would say. But if you've already converted a lot of product-led growth SaaS companies that are a good fit, you drop them into Ocean.io, and they will help you start just narrow and then go more broad as they build these lookalike audiences. And those two work really well together, where you can say, okay, with Ocean, I'm going to find more companies that are similar to who I'm already working with. And with revenue base, you can really have that cold layer. And they're developing very quickly as well, where you can use like natural language to find good fits. So they're starting to, really help you uncover those, best fit accounts a lot more easily. But if you want to be even more accurate, as I said, you can just use like cheap models to get that going. I'm going to try and do a tutorial on that next week, where I use Cursor to do it. And I posted one last week on LinkedIn. So check that out if you want more information on that. Then Jungler.ai for social listening. I think I've already said enough about Jungler. They're awesome. I love their API. The team's great. They do a great job at the whole social listening thing, so I can definitely recommend them. Just make sure you don't actually mention, hey, I saw your comment on XYZ their post. Instead, just say, okay, they've interacted with a post that is relevant to what we're selling, so our value prop is going to be relevant anyway. You don't have to mention that you've been stalking them, right? That is just one thing that a lot of people get wrong. And then multi-channel, just yourself, your SDRs, your inbox managers, have them pick up the phone, and the moment there's a positive reply, just you already got the data from revenue base, pick up the phone and try to get them on the calendar that way. So I've already talked about the discounts, etc. Let me give them to you now. So if you've been sticking around, then I very much appreciate that. And that means it's time for the discounts. So I'm going to pull that up here. So let me see. So if you go to revenuebase.ai, they have 500 free credits. They have, let's call it a self-serve API that you can use, but you also can get unlimited data. They have a lot of awesome stuff. If you use my code right here, so Decker H6, you get 10% off, and that can be up to about $1,000 off, which is not nothing, which is quite a lot actually. So definitely use the code if you're going to start trying out revenuebase.ai. Or talk to the team and they will get you set up and they will guide you. Then Mission Inbox, you can get $100 off, which which for inboxes is a lot. That's around 40 inboxes that you can get for free, which is a lot. That's a lot of volume right there. If you use the code Hans, so that is my name, you get $100 off. If you have doubts, reach out to the team, reach out to me. We will help you. We will get you set up. Then Jungler.ai, if you reach out to the team, they will get you 20% off for 12 months. So again, that is a lot. And they have some really solid plans. Just reach out to Hendrik, anyone else on the Jungler.ai team, you get 20% off for 12 months. And then for Ocean.io, they will give you from 5K up to 10K free credits, which is a lot. And all you have to do is send the email to agl@ocean.io or shoot me a message. I will intro you and you can get a lot of free credits. So this is 5,000 lookalike companies, more or less, top of my head, or there's a lot of lookalike, so thousands of lookalike companies you can get for free, and you can try out Ocean.io that way. Just shoot an email to agl@ocean.io. I'm going to post a link to this document. I'm going to post it in the webinar, in the event, on YouTube, and in the LinkedIn post. But if you have any questions, reach out to me, drop me a message on LinkedIn, and I will get back to you, and then you can get your discounts going. So it's time for the Q&A. And let me just get the comments up and see what is there to answer. So I know that not a lot of people that opted in were able to watch it, just because we had to switch from LinkedIn to YouTube. Unfortunately, technology let me down in this case. I'm still a massive fan of technology. It's helping me get great results and scale businesses and scale my consultancy, but live streaming is a whole different beast sometimes. Now, one quick thing. So for Jungler, the discount code is Hans20. I'm just going to add that to the document. So that is, let's see, Hans20. There we go. I'm going to drop the link to the document in here. Let's see. So anyone with the link can view. So that's going in here. I'm going to pin that. And then I'm going to distribute that on LinkedIn, and I'm going to make sure everyone gets that. I'm also going to make sure everyone gets the replay, because again, we had a lot of people who opted in for the webinar, but we had to change the channel last minute, which is unfortunate, but that doesn't mean you do not have to watch it, because the good thing is that because I was live on YouTube, it gets automatically just stored here on YouTube. Everyone's going to get that link. Everyone can watch it, and everyone can claim their discounts and start running outbound in a way that will get you just better results in 2026 and hopefully beyond. Let's see, what's going to change in the future because, as I said before, it's a moving target. I'm going to stick around for another 2 or 3 minutes and see if there are any specific questions. If not, then I'm going to sign off, and then I will see everyone in the next webinar. Don't have a date yet, but it will be soon, and it will be about exciting stuff. As I said, I'm really a lot into Cursor right now, and I like it a lot more than Cloud Code. And in the next webinar, I'm going to show you why that is and how I'm using it. So I'm excited for that one. And details are to follow. Don't see questions coming up right now. As I said, I will stick around a little bit more, and I saw some people DM me on LinkedIn, like a couple of people, two or three. Maybe they don't want to ask their questions in here, which is completely fine. Then I will answer them on LinkedIn. But then again, like if you have specific questions and you don't want to ask me here, just drop me a message on LinkedIn. I'll answer them for you. So that's it. Going to see everyone in the next webinar. The date will follow. By then, technology will be listening to me and will obey me. And I'll make sure that you can watch it on your favorite channel, if that's LinkedIn, and on YouTube as well, and on every other channel. So that's something that in about 2 to 3 weeks you'll be able to do. For now, thanks for watching. Go claim your discounts. The link is in here. You know where to find me on LinkedIn, and check out the tools that I'm using that are giving me some awesome results. And hopefully I will see you in the next webinar. And yet to everyone who was here, thanks for watching. Have a good one.